Good morning, class. Today we will be discussing geometric shapes and their attributes. Before we get started, I'd like to go over what the term attribute means. Attribute refers to any characteristic that could be used to group something. For our case today, we will be talking about attributes that refer to characteristics of geometric shapes. The basic attributes of geometric shapes include congruency. Congruency is when two figures are identical in form. A quick way to check if two figures are congruent is to place one over top of the other. If they completely overlap, then they are the same size and the same shape, otherwise known as congruent. The two figures on the board, if placed one on top of the other, would completely overlap, making them congruent figures. Another basic attribute of geometric shapes is parallel lines. Parallel refers to any lines, planes, surfaces, or objects that are side by side and have the same distance continuously between them. Parallel lines, if continued on into infinity, would never touch one another. If we extend the lines on the screen all the way out to infinity, we can see that this is true, so they must be parallel lines. Open shapes are those that are made up of line segments, but where there is at least one line segment that isn't connected to anything at one of its endpoints. Another way to check if a shape is open or not is if you could pour water into it, and when you turn it, would water come out or not? If water would come out, then it is an open shape. If water would stay within the shape, then it is a closed shape. A closed shape is a space that is totally enclosed by lines or unbroken contours. As we see this figure below, if I tried to pour water into the center of it, there is no way that it could escape, no matter how it was turned. Polygons are all closed plane figures bounded by straight lines. A specific type of polygon is a quadrilateral. Quadrilaterals are any polygons with four sides. Now, figures don't need to have opposite parallel sides, 90-degree angles, or any congruent lines in order to be considered quadrilaterals. All that is necessary is for there to be four straight lines connected to form a shape. A specific type of special quadrilateral is called a trapezoid. A trapezoid is a quadrilateral with at least one set of opposite parallel sides. As we see in the figure below, the top base and the bottom base are both opposite one another and are both parallel from one another. Although the other two sides are not parallel from one another, this figure can still be considered a trapezoid. A parallelogram, on the other hand, is a quadrilateral that must have two sets of opposite parallel sides. We can see from the definition of the trapezoid that all parallelograms are therefore trapezoids, but not all trapezoids are parallelograms, like the trapezoid pictured below. A specific kind of parallelogram is called a rhombus. A rhombus is a quadrilateral with four congruent sides. This also must mean that opposite sides are parallel and opposite angles are parallel. A specific type of rhombus is called a square. A square is a quadrilateral that not only has four congruent sides, but also has four congruent angles, 90 degrees. The square is kind of the baby of the rectangle and the rhombus. A rectangle is a quadrilateral with four congruent angles, and as we recall, a rhombus is a quadrilateral with four congruent sides. If you put the two together, you get the definition of square, a quadrilateral with four congruent sides and four congruent angles. Another type of quadrilateral is called a kite. A kite is a quadrilateral with two sets of congruent adjacent sides. Because all sides of a square are congruent, all squares are thus also kites. Triangles are three-sided polygons, unlike quadrilaterals, which are four-sided polygons. One specific type of triangle is called a scalene triangle. A scalene triangle has three unequal sides, and therefore three different angle measurements. A typical scalene triangle used in a lot of classroom examples is the 30-60-90 triangle. Another type of special triangle is called an isosceles triangle. An isosceles triangle is a triangle with at least two sides of equal length. In the figure provided below, the two sides on the left and right have equal length to one another, but are different length from the base. This makes it an isosceles triangle, but it is not an equilateral triangle. An equilateral triangle is a triangle specifically with all sides of equal length. This would also mean that all of the angles have to be the same measurement, or 60 degrees.